Hello everyone, I'm Marcin, and this is QA Sapper Guide, Stable Releases and Control Explosions. And now looking at it and hearing at the door question, is it just for QA or developers? In hindsight, I should have called it Dev Sapper Guide, because even though it's QA, I bring my QA perspective, but in reality it's for anyone in game dev. A lot of great knowledge and experience on how to make sure that you'll have a happy release. In order to not break the story, I will introduce myself so you know what I bring to the table in terms of experience. So this year is going to be my 10 years in QA and 5 years in management. I started in Testronic in 2013, then moved to CD Projekt and worked on Witcher title, Witcher 3 and DLCs. And then as a lead, at first as a regular QA, but then as a lead work on Gwent, the Witcher card game, and then Thronebreaker. And then since 2020, I started working on Ubisoft Connect. And since last year, I'm also responsible for the QC technical department that oversees automation and tools across different projects at Ubisoft. So that having out of the way, close your eyes, let me paint you a picture. Imagine the scene from Hollywood when there's a huge bomb in a public place, at a mall, whatever you want. There's police taped, everybody got evacuated. There's tension, there's panic and stress, and then you are called in as a sapper to the scene. Obviously, you equip the suit, you approach the bomb together with the team, you analyze it, what it is, how many cables, what needs to be done in order to disarm it. Then together you execute the plan, you snip the cables, every cable that you snip, you never know if it's gonna explode or not. But luckily, you snip the last cable, it doesn't explode, everybody starts high-fiving, everybody explodes with cheerful and happiness. And I was that sapper called in May 2020 to Ubisoft Connect, and this is the story of how I did it. So first thing first, the setup of was the scene at the mall. So it was 6 months until release. The project was moving rapidly from alpha to gold, so I believe alpha was in June, and then gold was September, so very rapid schedule. Unfortunately, QA team was insufficiently prepared and understaffed, so the team was around 20 people. The expectations we need to have from production was we need 56 people, so yes, 36 people in 6 months seems feasible. And also there was no project manager assigned or high lead that would give the direction to the team, so there was the QA effort was all over the place. So the team needed to have someone that can help the team bring focus on the quality efforts. And there was strong message from Ubisoft Connect management and also Ukraine Studios that Ubisoft Connect is the core software. It's part of every game, rewards, challenges, login, everything. Like if Ubisoft Connect stops, you just cannot play our game. So obviously, as with any bomb, failure is not an option. So once we know what we're dealing with, we have to equip the suit. And I strongly believe that your team is your extension. If you're a lead or a manager, producer, you cannot do things without your team. They are your suit, they are your hands. They will help you bring whatever you need to be done. So you need to get to know them ASAP. You know your hands, you know your legs. So the same with your team, you have to get to know them. You have to know their experience, capabilities, strengths, and weaknesses. And don't ask only them, ask others around the team, so the team itself, but also the project leads, HR, other devs, anybody can provide you sufficient information on the team, knowing their struggles, their history. Everything will allow you to adjust your strategy and how you lead them to success. Something that very helped me a lot in doing so is doing one-on-ones, and this is the agenda that I proposed for us to go along. So obviously you introduce yourself, but then I ask them for their background, so education, history in game dev or other industries, what are their current daily responsibilities. And one of the things that usually leads don't think about is things that you might broke when you start, because you're a new lead, you want to change things, improve things, and then unfortunately it might happen that you might start destroying things. So make sure you make a list of things that are sacred, cannot be touched, because those are the things that make the team happy and motivated. Also, make the list of things that are currently frustrating them or making their life harder, so all the lists that you have to fix or deal with. And then, obviously, because you're their lead, their manager, they have expectations towards them, as you have from them. So make sure you list all those expectations and either align all those expectations. or have them discussions so you can align together. And then obviously their career plans. So one thing is what they're doing right now currently, but there might be things that they want to do in the future. So, if they're now currently in QA or UI or whatever, and they want to move either to be a manager or do different assets or switch between departments, you have to know that, because then you can adjust the tasks, what they're doing, so to keep them motivated and happy. Because if they're currently unhappy in the current state of their career, you'll definitely have trouble executing this amount of the bomb together with them. As you can see with that plan, I'm already searching for those troubles, for those little small explosions that may happen during down the line. And one of the easiest example is, imagine it's 2 months before release and a crucial member of your team decides to leave because headhunter approached him and say, I can give you more money. And now you're 2 months before release and the crucial member of your team just left. So make sure you know your team and you know the struggles so you can appropriately plan for the future. One of the things you also need to do is to know how your team is organized, and I will present you how we were organized back then and how we kinda-ish organize ourselves today. Not to tell you how to do it, but just to show you that there's no one recipe to do it. Adjust to taste, make it whatever you like, just make sure that it fits your needs. Back then, it was logical for us to have 4 domains, either centered around the PC client itself, and then teams working in different sites, so Paris, Massive, and Montreal. Those domains were taken by 14 Agile teams, and each tester was assigned to 1 or 2 Agile teams. And to the ish, because right now we are doing another Agile movement around the things to adjust to the current process and needs. But we have 3 value streams: is publishing, engagement, and support. And those value streams are being taken care of by 22 Agile teams. And each tester has around 2 to 3 Agile teams. So we grow that expertise. Now we have more people and we can share more workloads. So now also just to move those, break those silos between the teams, so we don't have just one tester assigned to one Agile team. We try to facilitate communication, and for me personally, the best way to do it is to have, for example, a tester working on 2 Agile teams, 50%, 50%, because also it kind of smooths out the work. Down the line of the presentation, I say smooth is better than fast. The same goes for testers, especially if it's at the beginning of the project, or there might be some situations where there's a peak in work and then there's a valley of work. So you might have a situation when either QA is overworked or have not much to do, and you can, for example, fix that when they are assigned to more than one team, because then if the one team doesn't have any work, then they can move to the other one. The other thing that will be very helpful for you is build a safe atmosphere to fail. You need to hear if something is wrong ASAP. If people are afraid to come to you and say that they did a mistake, that they did something wrong, that there is something wrong on the project, for whatever reason the fear is, either they are fear for the job, or because they're new and they're scared to go to the big scary manager, whatever it is, try to make sure that nobody is scared to say that something is wrong on the project, because that's basically a bomb-making machine that will be very problematic for you in the future. And one of the things that will help you build that safe atmosphere to fail is a trust, but trust not in terms of reliability. So, if somebody tells you, hey, I'm going to do it, they're going to do it. It's more in terms of trust, how it's defined in 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Highly recommend that book. It even has a nice template for you to figure out what dysfunctions your team have and how to fix them. But here we'll focus mainly on trust as the basic fundamental of your teamwork. When you can say anything to anyone. Trust is super crucial, that if somebody has conflict with someone and doesn't like how somebody is doing their work, they can just approach them and figure out the solution to themselves. The worst case scenario you can have is that people don't trust themselves to be able to speak to each other. So they will have a natural fear of conflict, and either fear of conflict that they don't want to be conflictive and have a quarrel, but also they just don't care. So you make a decision, hey guys, we're now switching, for example, from Jenkins to Team City, and half of the room is like, yeah, sure, whatever, right? You don't want that. If it's a stupid decision to change to Team City, have the ability, have that trust that if they say to you, hey, Team City is not an option, it's better to stick with Jenkins, they won't fear to tell you that. And naturally, if there's no conflict, there's no commitment, because they don't care whatever is decision, because they just don't trust you and don't trust each other. And if there's no commitment, nobody cares what nobody is doing, so they won't hold ourselves accountable. So If somebody decides, okay, I'm gonna migrate us to Team City, nobody will hold them accountable if it's done correctly or not, and then nobody will care about the results. And then when you have that situation, especially in bigger teams, when instead of results, accountability, and being a team player, the most important part is about the status and ego. Who is the bigger star? Who does the most things? People start caring more about themselves than caring about the project or the team itself. So build that trust. And last thing, depending on your team, and now because you know them, you ask them and ask the whole project, what's the team? You know their strengths and weaknesses. And there will be juniors, there will be middle, there will be senior, depending on the product. You have to make sure that the team is prepared for the release. So you have to mentor and coach them. And in my case, the team was struggling with implementing dynamic test plans. So I taught the team how to do dynamic test plans, so you don't have to always execute 200 test cases. You can just next time decide just do 150 test cases, whatever it is, if UI, changing techniques or tools or whatever. And if you cannot do that, it's always good if you have the technical knowledge to do that, but that's not a necessity for a leader or a manager. Find someone that can do it. So if you cannot support them in teaching them and mentoring, find someone that can do it. Once the team is settled, you know everything about them. Now it's time to gather allies and tools. So talk to as many people as possible. So not only on the project itself, developers, but also if you have tech ops, live ops, marketing, whatever the team is, because all those teams will be working together towards that release. And when you're doing a release, all those teams will be collaborating together. So you have to have those connections. And one of the most important questions in your arsenal in that situation is the question why. Why are we doing this product? Why it's so important? Why are we doing this or not that? And usually you'll get two answers. One is a very good answer for you, is just, I know why we are doing it, and this is why. Good, now you have an expert on your team that you can always reference to. And there's also that scary question, scary answer that is, I don't know what we are doing, we always did that, so we continue doing that. And it's also a good sign because now you found yourself a bomb, now you have time to diffuse it and try to switch that question from dogmatic, we always done it, and try to find value in that solution, because if the people are doing it for the sake of doing it, it's not good for your release. And again, when you're talking to as many people as possible, build those friendships, build those connections with other departments. Again, it's a team work to release a game. If you're a small indie studio working with a publisher, build those connections, build those friendships, because either they're providing you QA or marketing or selling your game. So build those friendships, because during the release, it will be very helpful. Tools are important. We use Jira or other tracking bugs systems, test management systems, build systems, whatever it is. Make sure you know them, you know what everything is being used on the project. And either you have enough time to change them if those are insufficient or won't do the job for you, or at least you'll now have time to think of contingency plans, how to work with those tools to fit your needs, because sometimes we don't have time to change. Like, some people hate Jira, but we are just destined to work with it. So learn to love them, or at least work with them. And last but not least, automation. It's a very loaded word. It's not definitely necessary to have automation for release. It's just a nice tool to offload your team from mundane work. So please focus when using automation. Focus on those small, very frustrating tasks that are simple to automate but provide the most value. So either do the tasks that are super bad for your team, or that will bring most of the time for the team. And again, ask those questions. Why do we have automation or we don't have automation? Who's doing that? Is it QA or developers? Is there any support, maintenance, all those questions? And you sometimes will be surprised for the answers. Sometimes it's going to be, again, that dogmatic. We never thought about automation, so that's an opportunity for you to exploit, or for whatever reason. So again, automation is cool, but don't sweat. If you don't have it, it's not end of the world. Then we have to analyze our bomb. So we approached it, and the most basic and underappreciated tool is risk assessment. It's very boring. You usually do it in Excel, but use whatever tool you want. And it's a very cool tool to ensure that you map all the risks, all the problems that will happen either on the project or during release or after release. and you can go about the general risks, so people management, quality, process, pipeline, threats or opportunities. So you list all of them until there's no end, like until you're just like, I cannot figure out anymore, then it's when you know that you've finished. So make sure you list them all, prioritize them. You can use whatever scale you want. Usually it's priority, severity, and a little description and solutions. Make sure you assign a person to that risk, so there's a person responsible for that risk and is either dealing with it or working on it, but make sure you have that. Of course, we can go a little bit deeper in the risk, so from general you can go a little bit deeper, so you can focus mainly on the product, so backlog. Is it too much, is it too little? How the team is going through the backlog, so are there any blockages or bottlenecks? What's the feature list? How many features we still have to complete? Are there any risks? Are there any features that are vague or might cause problems during the release? And then scope. They're usually in game dev, you know that paper will accept everything. People will figure out all the features, and then unfortunately people start working on them, and because time gets shorter, things got cut, and then you're basically wasted 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months on development, and then you put it down the drain. You can also, and that's usually overlooked, usually people only focus on risks in regards to the project, but also make sure you look at the risks from resource perspective. So workload, is the team overburdened and overworked? Do you have buffers? So don't expect to make sure you're going to finish the product just for the release date. It never happens, so make sure you have buffers before the release. Do you have enough headcount to get the job done? And test costs, no matter if you're a QA or developer, things need to be tested. If you're a small company, usually developers do that test, so make sure you have those test costs written, so you know, again, to have that time buffer. If you do a feature, then somebody has to play it, so what is the time needed to verify it? What's the time? How many people you have to do that? So make sure you have those risks written down. And you have 7 risk responses, 7 risk response strategies to it. So you can either just accept it and do nothing about it. It's the easiest way, but also very risky. If you like to gamble, then sure, do it. But it's a valid, like usually people always are like, let's do something about the risk. Let's always do about the risk. But sometimes it just doesn't matter. Like if it was decided that we need to have that character, we will have to have that character, and we cannot do anything about it. So just accept it, don't try to change it. And then depending, not all risks also, that's very crucial to remember. Not everything is a risk in a sense that will damage your company or a project or release. Sometimes those are opportunities. In example, you don't have automation, that might be a risk, but also opportunity. If the team or the company never did automation, it might be opportunity to start doing automation. So it's an opportunity instead of a risk. Of course, that depends on the budget and all that stuff, right? So you can share or transfer. So instead of your team doing the risk or you personally doing the risk, you can share with another person or another team. So instead of being solo, are you personally responsible? You can move that risk to somebody else. You can enhance or mitigate, so either increase the probability of something happening or decreasing. Usually the most popular strategy to do. So if there's a risk of a blocker or crash or whatever, then you can do a lot of things to lower the probability that crash will happen. So you'll do more performance optimization. Crashes may still happen, but at least you mitigated the risk that now the likelihood of crash happening is much lower. Or you can exploit, so if you have never had automation, you can basically invest maximum effort and maximum money into automation. So fully go into it or avoid. So basically, let's say this quest is very risky and it's shaky, it's not stable, it's low quality, so maybe just remove the quest. So that's how you avoid the risk completely. And while doing so, list all the things you have and the things that you need. You will be very surprised how many times I listed the things that I wanted to have on the project. There was some crazy stuff like having a very expensive tool or a very expensive team to work on the project, and sometimes the company was like, yeah, we can do that easily, like when do you want it to be done? So sky is the limit. Don't limit yourself. Worst case scenario, those will wait for a better time, so part of your backlog, but at least now you will know what arsenal you have and what are your dreams. Oof, there's a lot, but bombs are tricky, so before we go into disarming a bomb, we have to have a plan. It will be quite advisable. I'm a very visual guy. There's a Gantt chart. You don't have to use Gantt charts. There are, as many lovers of Gantt charts as haters. Just make it visual. So use Trello, use Google. I even used, seen people use Google Calendar to just present the milestones with descriptions. So just make it visual. So you know what's happening, when it's happening, by whom it's done, all those stuff. So then the team, if somebody wants to look at the glance, what's currently happening on the project, what are the nearest milestones, you can basically look at it and see without any questions or long discussions. And again, visualization makes it much easier. Also, I suggest min-maxing. Here it's best known for me example of QA, but it can be done in any department. Just make sure you minimize the work and maximize the value of that work. In case of QA, we ensure that the testers that are close to developers are not working on executing test cases, on executing speedruns, those simple tasks. They were focused on debugging, on that nitty-gritty that requires a lot of connections with the developers, a lot of knowledge, so a lot of ramp-up. And then we used external QA for those more simple tasks that will still need to be done, like everybody needs to brush teeth, so that has to be done. But it wouldn't be great if somebody would brush your teeth. I guess that's kind of weird. So external QA was doing the test plans, speedruns, and smoke tests. So they were focusing on tasks that if test plans and smoke tests are done properly, anybody can do them. So why not put it to external, while testers are focusing on more valuable work. One of the ways we were min-maxing as well, it was done for two reasons. One is sanity of the people working on the project. If you're always testing Xbox and the same build every day, you're gonna go insane. The second reason is that people start being blind to what they're testing or what they're working on. So some things that might be obviously broken with the thing that you're working on, you stop seeing because you work on it so much. So in order to remove that bias, we were rotating those testers on different platforms, different activities, just to make sure that they have different stimuli and that they don't crazy doing the same thing over and over again. And again, improving the quality of their work so they don't become blind to obvious things they're working on. One thing that you can also min-max is the communication. I highly propose, if you have a lot of tickets to go through, at least once a week or whatever the cadence you want, to have QA, other dev, and producer or product owner on the meeting and prioritize tickets, tasks, or whatever it is. To go through the tickets is going to make your life easier because you always have the quality aspect of the work, production aspect of the work, so the business, and then developer that is working on the feature. In order to go through the feature, usually they know what they're talking about, all the details, so it's going to be just quickly going through the priority and if you want to do it or not. And one of the things that is super useful, because from experience, usually, especially when you're closer to release, it doesn't matter what priority system you have, even if it's from P1 to P10, usually at the end, it's always either everything is a P0, you have to do it right now, or it's a P1, so it's going to be done later. And it doesn't make your life easier. Like, it's very hard to filter, it's very hard to see what's the current status and what needs to be done in order for us to release. So I highly recommend the must-go pattern. It's a very unfortunate acronym, but it is what it is. Must, should, and could, plus want. And I know it's for all the QAs in the audience, it's the only color with slides, but that's for a reason so we can follow easily. It's very good because it shifts the perspective from the importance of a department of a feature to importance what we really need to do in order to release our product. So we ask the question, can we release this product without this feature or without this fix? If no, because it's so dangerous that we will lose money or lose players or whatever it is, it's a must, it has to be done before the release. If we can release without it, yes, we also have to ask ourselves, okay, there might be things that we still would like to fix or do because it will be very painful to release without it. And then one example can be a must is a 100% blocker at the beginning of the game. Obviously, players cannot play your game. We cannot release with such issue. But there might be a bug that is basically a crash, but it's either in a very obscure feature or there's a workarounds. So it's still painful, like it's still not a good thing that you're releasing with such a bug. But you know, we can survive a month with that bug and then fix it later. So that brings you buffer and again makes you nice priority. So once you have dealt with all the musts, now you go to shoulds. Obviously, if we removed all the musts and shoulds, the obvious question is, do we still want to do it? Like sometimes you can basically say, again, with the strategies of risks, we might just say, okay, let's cut it. It's not useful anymore. If we still want it in the game, the fix or whatever it is, maybe it's just a broken art asset or whatever it is, yes, could. It will wait for a better time. If no, put it as a want and never deal with it again. Depending on the size of your company, it doesn't have to be reports. Just make sure the communication flows. Again, this is my experience, especially QA-driven in this situation. We were doing daily reports and validation reports. Daily reports was only very crucial information for the project because it was read by everyone, so we make sure that everybody's going to read it. We know that situation when you open an email, it's a huge report, and you're like, I'm gonna read it today. Like it's Monday, let's not do that. So with those daily reports, we just make sure that it's very crucial information that people want to read it. Usually just musts, and okay, we are in the validation period or whatever. This is what's happening, so people are notified and communication is flowing. And then bigger, more detailed validation reports done monthly or bi-monthly with much more details, but obviously because they're done bi-monthly or monthly, you're not spamming people with loads of data. So from my perspective, for good communication, good practices, when you're writing emails or reports on the status of the project or your department or the feature you're working on, start narrow with the most crucial information for the stakeholders. So usually the drop-off for reading the email, and probably you know that as well, you open the email, you read the first 2 sentences, and then you're like, I'm going to deal with that. So make sure those first 2 sentences or whatever the person sees first is the thing that is you want them to see. Then naturally go wider with content if needed. So if you have detailed reports, detailed filters, JIRAs, whatever it is, then put it, scroll. If there's people that are interesting, they will obviously scroll. You don't have to flash everything at the beginning. Have meaningful KPIs. There's always that temptation that you wanna look smart in terms of a stakeholder on your team. You're gonna put every data point that you're tracking on the project, and make sure that you're not doing that because again, it just floods and spams people with information. Don't do that. So as said before, just min-max your report. So make sure you're with as least possible words and images, whatever it is, you provide as maximum information as possible. And sometimes it's super useful. We did it as well. Use external tools to provide in-depth information. So instead of pasting the whole JIRA into that email, just put a link, and people usually will click it if they want to. Okay, now we've done the planning. All that work, a lot of work has been done, so let's go and disarm that bomb. If you know the game called Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, that's my idea of how you should do it. Just make sure communication is flowing, talk to each other between departments, on the meetings, everywhere possible, to make sure that everybody is informed about the status. Usually what I saw is that departments or agile teams will just go into focus mode. It's very close to the release. So there's a temptation, don't bother me, I'm working right now, which is super dangerous because if something changes unexpectedly, they will never know. So now you have 22 agile teams working separately, and that's just disaster for the release. So communication is key, but make sure that you're adjusting your communication to the audience. The way you talk with your boss of the studio, with stakeholders, directors, whoever it is on a high level, make sure you just present the information that is crucial for them. Usually high stakeholders are interested in business, so it's going to be delivered on time. Are we not going over the budget, all that stuff? So just talk about this, because worst case scenario, if let's say you have a creative director and he hears something that he can do something about it, and he'll be like, no worries, I'm going to deal with it. And now you have a high stakeholder that doesn't have context about the work or feature you're working on, and now he starts messing with your feature, which, depending on the situation, either may create a lot of good, but a lot of people that are especially working with in bigger companies, any playthrough with high stakeholder equals usually more work than less. And then again, from the other side, if you're talking to a developer, then preferably they don't care about more or less if we are making money or not. They cared of the details, if the bug is fixed or not. So those people will care more about the details. So adjust to the taste. The bigger the stakeholder, the more crucial information the more hands-on developer, then more details are needed. This is a slide because I've mentioned before we had to ramp up the team very quickly. It might be also experience for you, so I think it's valuable to share it. 6 months is very, it's very hard to find intermediate or senior people profiles, and for us it wasn't feasible at all. So we focused mainly on hiring juniors. So we adapted the hiring process. It was very knowledge-based, easily Googleable, and it give you any information about the quality, culture fit, all that stuff. And because you're hiring very quickly, you need to depend on those people in a very short amount of time. So you have to know that they are independent. We adjusted the hiring process so that we're looking for that culture fit for those soft skills rather than hard skills. We obviously adapted onboarding, so it might be very fast and rapid to get those testers on board. And then adapted our testing strategy, so moved from creating test plans and test cases that usually require high technical knowledge to more simpler tasks that can be used to any department. Make sure that those people are doing simpler tasks or tasks that don't require a lot of technical knowledge to offload the work, while you focus on high-profile workers to do more complicated stuff. Obviously, you have the option use external resources to fill the gap. So again, if you're missing assets or missing stuff that can be easily outsourced, then by all means use it. And again, for the thing of communication, because we basically doubled in those 6 months. So it was crucial that we are all aligned on the objective, and when we are going, and when you have a lot of juniors, it's very hard to, it's like herding cats, right? So daily meetings for hot periods. So when the validation, a lot of work is being done. We had daily meetings, but nobody wants to have 20 meetings a day. So once the period cooled off, then we had chill weekly follow-ups to ensure that we still align, we still have the direction, but we don't need to meet every day. Once you have all that done, we go back to the point of smooth is better than fast. One of the tools in order to do that is content lock and code freeze, which are very scary words. Because usually producers hate those. It slows down work. Every commitment has to be checked by another person, so it really slows down the work. But I think it's much better to test something or validate or verify something for 3 days and then make sure and then be confident that whatever went into code base or the asset is proper, then do it very fast, and then if something breaks, spend those 3 days frantically looking what broke the code. While you're doing that, you have a very good overlook of everything that is going into your game. Create those, you can now start creating the list of things in your code or in your game that will explode, and you have to then create contingency plans for them. So sometimes, you have to input a stuff that into your game that definitely will explode, and it's very risky, but there's no other option. It's like the only solution we have. So just make sure you know what will cause that issue, what's going to happen. In one case, on Connect, we know that we're going to have performance issues on PlayStation 4, so we notified marketing, live ops, all the support, so people with contact with the player base. We didn't know if everybody will have the performance issues, but at least now all the teams are informed of those that happen. Workarounds or information will be spread, so that will buy us time in order to provide a patch for the users. And I think we love to do is to verify those risks, so put them in whatever project management tool you're using. So again, put a priority, person responsible, and do frequent follow-ups. Are those risks still valid? If something changed, so then you have all the information during the release on the status of what are the bombs that are going to explode and what was disarmed. And the only thing left to do now, once you're executing the plan, is just, you're snipping those cables, and you're just hoping that you're snipping the proper cables. So look for expected and unexpected. If something happens, you're now responsible for making sure that your team goes smoothly to the release and after the release. So evolve, adapt, and overcome. The aftermath, so hopefully you released your game, nothing exploded, you get sales, everybody is happy about your game. What we did on the release dates, we did war rooms. Those are super fun. So basically you gather the most communicated teammates on your project, By that, I mean people that can make things happen the quickest. So either they have a lot of connections, or they can debug very quickly, so they can make things happen very quickly. So if something happens, if players start reporting issues or problems, that people in this room can very quickly either figure out what's happening or very quickly fix those things. And those rooms are so focused, it's so teamwork based that I've seen directors want to participate so much that they were like asking, do you want coffee, do you want tea, do you want snacks? Like everybody wanted to participate in that war room, even if it's just make coffee for someone. And during that, look for both unexpected and expected. You cannot plan for everything. So make sure you're looking in the places that you haven't perceived before. So don't only look for the things that you have on your checklist. Make sure you're also looking at the things that you haven't planned for. Last thing, games are awesome. Awesome people make games. So high fives are mandatory. Doesn't matter if the release will be successful or not. You spend 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, however years together working on a game, and it's still a wonderful achievement to make such a complicated thing together. So celebrate, champagne, cake, to the restaurant, whatever it is, at least high fives, right? So make sure, I always love saying people over a project, you'll be surprised that even if it's kind of contradictory that you should be always focusing on the project, and project is the highest priority, but in the contrary, if you focus on the people, automatically project gets better. So how did it look for Ubisoft Connect? Did I disarm the bomb? Yes, it was quite successful. Probably I wouldn't be speaking for you right now if it wasn't a success. Of course, there were some problems on the release. So we released on October 26th together with Watch Dogs Legions. 2 weeks after with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. As said before, we had issues on PS4 performance-wise for Watch Dogs Legion, but the communication was prepared, so it bought us buffer to figure out what was happening. For Assassin's Creed Valhalla, we had issues with rewards and challenges, but again, we had contingency plans, we had workarounds, so we instantly communicated to the players on the forums, hey, this is what you do. And the commitment the testimony to how great the release was. One of the site managers said that he remembers releases for Uplay and Ubisoft Connect. Ubisoft Connect was then, so for Uplay, that they were doing crunch and had sleepless nights before release, after release, and it was the first release they didn't have to worry about it at all. So what makes a QA manager happy. When speaking about that, as you know, I'm from Ubisoft Kiev. So in Ukraine, the war is still happening. So please support Ukraine in whatever way you want or prefer. It's a humanitarian, political activism, whatever activism. Just please keep supporting. There's still developers there. They're still making games, awesome games. And I only read in history books about that national spirit and that heroism of not being breaked by war or adversaries. And it's super cool to, I would prefer not to witness it, but it's very humbling, and I feel humbled and privileged to be working with such awesome people that despite all that still continue to work and make games. And to hit the point even harder, last week I had a one-on-one with one of my product managers, and they said that yesterday there were drone attack near their house, and they, I don't know if you know, but currently the strategy to go against drone attacks is to shoot them with guns. So her afternoon was ruined by people shooting guns at drones. So it's still happening. It's happening very close. So please support Ukraine. So that was my recipe during the presentation. This is how I do things, but as any recipe, adjust however you want to the size, to the team, to the type team you're dealing with or managing. So remove things from the recipe, add things to the recipe however you want. If there are any things I want you to take from this presentation is to ensure you create safe atmosphere to fail, build trust on that project. That's fundamental for you to be able to have a successful release. Risk mapping is key, so make sure you do it. Adjust your prioritization so it's not binary, it doesn't complicate your life, makes your life easier. Smooth process is better than fast, and high fives are mandatory. And that's it. Thank you so much. I think it's time for the questions. Yeah. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. Should I just run to the? Yeah. 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 I mean, for the camera, I guess. Wanna.
Okay, so I wanted to ask about the agile teams. You mentioned that you had QAs working on one or more agile teams. Could you share how does that work? Is it just QA as a passes the information between the QA lead and the agile team, or is he just tasked more to be a part of the agile team?
Yeah, thank you. So they are embedded in the agile team, so they're part of the team. We also make sure to shift left in the agile team. So I love the saying that in the agile team, if you're waiting for the tester to test, you're not really agile. So I make sure that developers are part of testing. So it's more about them mainly being responsible for the part of the quality of the agile team. So they're part of the team. They're not only doing the tests, but they are main responsibility. Like we'll have a backend programmer and front-end programmer. Like they have distinct responsibilities, but if front-end program, I mean, probably doesn't work like that, but you get the idea. Like if you have 3 programmers, they can do their work interchangeably. The same here. They're embedded in teams, and they work together with the team, with the product owner, and do testing activities and ensure the overall quality. There might be underlying question to that, especially for bigger projects. Okay, how then you do validations if everybody is embedded in the agile team? So we negotiate with product owners. So like with any housekeeping, somebody has to do the dishes, somebody has to do the laundry, so somebody has to do that time and spend. So usually we negotiate with product owners. Hey, it's validation time. Somebody has to share resources. So usually product owners share. Okay, this team has less work to do this month or this week, so we can give you testers. So how you usually deal with that? I hope that answers the question. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, you have to. I think you have to. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, come along. Yeah.
Hi. You told about cycle testers between projects to maintain high focus on each project. Can you tell me more about it? Do you have any know-how how to do it best?
How time we have? Yeah, it's a very. I think when you embed those testers inside the team and they work directly with the product owner and have straight priorities, what's the highest value work currently needed on the project? What are the areas that the agile team needs to do? I think that's the best way. Like again, like I think the min-maxing technique is the best. Like try to have a mindset that you try to minimize amounts of time spent on something and trying to maximize the value that your tasks or work will be doing. And that's when you get that hyper focus, when you're not spending like, okay, let's have a day of research on a topic. How much I can squeeze out of the day to ensure that our objectives are met. And I think that's from that very broad question, the best answer I can give you.
Thank you. You have mentioned that the processes, the procedures that your QA teams had to perform, had to adapt in case of this situation. But I'm also interested how Ubisoft as a company, has their management, what were the lessons they learned after all of this?
That's a good question. Sorry, I have to, because it was 3 years ago, so I have to poke my brain for memories. But again, the release was successful, so we didn't have to do like a post-mortem. I think the only thing is that the goals were very ambitious, and we didn't treat the product as a live service. Uplay and now Ubisoft Connect is a product as a service. And the things that we learned the most is that as a Ubisoft, answering that question, that we should treat Ubisoft more as a service, so we shouldn't be focused on, as in game dev, you have a AAA project, you from start to finish, you don't share it with the players. And now we do that strategy when we you go to the players and release alpha or beta for them to test out. So we introduced players and users as soon as possible so they can give us feedback. As for QA, we didn't need to have so many people on the project. I don't know, I had to do whatever I need in 6 months. But definitely the numbers they gave were overboard, and I think it was us trying to fix a technical debt, in this case a test debt, by swarming people over it. And sometimes it's used, but after the end of the project you have to now feed 60 people. I think there would be have better planning and better resource allocation. So especially know, okay, what is the objectives and how many people we need. So I think the lessons for that in terms of QA. Next time we do planning, and now we do that. Plan accordingly, so you have enough people just for the job, and you don't overcompensate with people. I think that's it. So yeah, thank you so much.